Aging Insight, empowering you through the aging process.
Well, all right, good afternoon. This is law school lunch. So the point is to feed you a little lunch, give you a little education, and get you back out in time for those of you who are still contributing to the Social Security Fund. You can get back to work. All right. Today I'm talking about powers of attorney and guardianships. This is such an important topic because most people come into my office and they say, you know what? I understand I have got to get this important document done, take care of my family. I finally realized I'm not going to live forever, so I need to get my will done. And I always look at them and say, you know, I agree, it's a good thing to do, but when your will is relevant, you won't be, okay? You're not here. So let's talk about what your plans are while you're breathing and above ground, okay? Because that's what powers of attorney and guardianship come down to. That's why you should care a whole lot more about a power of attorney and avoiding a guardianship than, frankly, even having a last will done. We live in amazing times. You know, our average lifespans are ticking on up there into, the mid-80s. Willard Scott and Al Roker, they always give a shout out to someone who's turned 100 or a few folks. They used to do that for everyone whose family sent in the information. They don't have time for that now. So many people are turning 100 and living to 100. So there's a few people, I guess, you get shortchanged. You don't get the shout out from Al Roker. But that's great. We've got medical care. We can, I bet if I took a show of hands, there's some people in this room that have beat cancer, that have survived heart attacks, and they are still here enjoying life. That's great. But the reality is the trade-off for our wonderful health care and our long life is that many of us will face some decline as we get a little bit older. We're still here, we're still breathing, we still want to live our best life, but we might need a little help. All right, well, you know what? From the time you turn 18 years of age until the time you die, legally, you are your own boss. Now, don't ask your wife if you're really your own boss, okay? But the law says you are your own boss from the time you turn 18 until the time you die. Unfortunately, if we start to decline a little bit, the last person who usually knows it is you, okay? You either don't want to admit it or you don't even recognize it. But we all know that our bodies and our brains, they don't last forever. And our bodies don't do for us at 75 what they did for us at 25. That's just the reality. We can look in the mirror and see that. But our brains are kind of the same way, okay? So we need to prepare for the fact that we might need a little bit of help. I have this conversation with family members every day. A lady came into my office. Her name was Linda, and she came in to talk about her mother. And she said, well, I think my mom is being taken advantage of by a young lady that's living with her that is there to kind of help take care of her. And I was like, oh my goodness. And she said, well, yeah, the worst part is the young lady living with her is my daughter. Okay, so we had a grandma and a granddaughter, and I'm sitting here talking to Linda, the daughter, and I said, well, are you sure? What do you think's going on? And she said, well, I know Mom gets her Social Security check direct deposited on the 3rd, and I've just noticed that my daughter, Caitlin, she's going out and eating out a lot right after that. And I found out that there's a debit card attached to the account now, and my mother has never used a debit card. And I said, well, maybe, and I said, well, what kind of debits? She said, well, the gas station and maybe Chili's and some restaurants and Starbucks. And she said, so it just really makes me think it's my daughter. Now, I'm a jaded person, but I try not to jump to conclusions. And I said, well, maybe we should investigate a little further and give her the benefit of the doubt. And finally, Linda looked at me and she said, Lisa, on the first Friday of every month after the 3rd, somebody is spending over $100 at Victoria's Secret. And I don't think it's my mother. Okay. All right, so, and sure enough, I looked at the bank statements, and just like clockwork, I don't think they carry a lot of delicates for the ladies of more mature age at Victoria's Secret. So, next question. Has your mother, has she ever signed a power of attorney? No. Okay. Well, do you think she has capacity to do so now? And the lady said, I do think my mother would have capacity to sign that power of attorney, but the last person she wants to give it to is me. And I said, well, why is that? And she goes, well, frankly, my daughter has convinced her that I'm the bad guy. Okay. So we ended up having to file a guardianship in order to get the finances under control. Okay? And this is a process. A guardianship will break a family apart. It's all the daughter did, frankly, was confirm her mother's suspicions when she filed for that guardianship. All right. But we found hundreds and hundreds of dollars each month were going out for the daughter. So it was the right thing to do. In 2016, Texas studied its guardianship system, and they looked at 20,000 guardianship cases in 21 counties. Now, y'all know Texas has 254 counties, right? Y'all remember your Texas history? Okay. Out of the 21 counties they looked at, almost half of the guardianships that were supposed to be court supervised had never had initial inventories filed and had never had annual reports filed for the judge to review. So essentially what happened in those cases is a judge appointed someone to be over another person's finances and medical decisions, and then never looked at it again. Okay. And so there's been a lot of news coming out of Texas about these abuses in guardianships. Well, the legislature has never seen a problem that it doesn't feel like it needs to, make a few more laws about. So one of the big things I wanted to do today was talk to you about some changes in Texas guardianship law and power of attorney law so that you all can be prepared. Right. If you do not have a power of attorney and you end up needing some help, you are likely going to find yourself the subject of a guardianship action. This is a public action. It is a lawsuit filed in the county. The records are available to be viewed by anyone. Okay? So I had I've been in practice of law for 20 years now. I remember when I was a young lawyer, I hated going to lunch with old lawyers. They always told their stories. Okay, but now I understand, because I always got a story. A lot of people think that they will avoid guardianship because their spouse will take care of things. Okay? That's not how it works. Maybe it should work that way, but it doesn't. I had a case out of Lamar County. I had a married couple. They had been married for 66 years. Okay? Had 2 sons. So this was like the Leave It to Beaver family, right? All right, so at age 85 and 86, and they're doing fine. Husband had worked. Mom had been basically a homemaker. Taught a little piano lessons on the side. Okay? Dad had a stroke. Husband had a stroke. Mom needed to get financial information to give to the rehab facility so they could apply for some government assistance to pay for her husband's rehab services. And she couldn't get the information. Okay? She can see what goes in the bank account. It's a joint bank account. The facility needed to know the amount of the gross income that was deposited, that the retirement check consisted of. Well, she didn't know that. She knew what the net was when it hit the bank account. So she called his retirement, which was the state of Texas, and they said, sorry, we can't tell you anything. Okay, and she's like, well, I'm the wife. Sorry. Okay, so do you have power of attorney? No. Well, we can't tell you anything unless you get a guardianship and get a court order that says we can release that information to you. Do you think this couple that had been married for 66 years ever thought there would be any information between the two of them that they couldn't access? Okay. Under the present guardianship laws, my 85-year-old client had to register with the state of Texas on the computer. She then had to take an hour-long online class on how to be a guardian of her husband, who she'd been married to for 66 years. And because they had an IRA account that had almost $100,000 in it, she then had to be fingerprinted by the Texas Department of Public Safety before we ever got to the courthouse to ask for the guardianship. Now, do you think that takes a little bit of time to get those kind of things done? All right. The state of Texas has seen that there has been inattention and abuses in guardianships. And so they are really, the pendulum is really swinging toward, let's be safe about this. Let's know who our guardians are. Let's get criminal background checks. There is no exclusion for a spouse. There is no exclusion for adult children. Okay. This is a case of really some bad apples have created a problem really for all the people that are trying to do the right thing. All right, so after my client takes the class, registers on the computer, gets a criminal background check, we then file the application for guardianship, and we have to include medical information. We have to include in that application how much income their household brings in every month. We have to include information about their savings and retirement and assets. All of that is public record. All that is filed with the court. And then we have to get a process server to take those papers and serve her husband. Okay? Anybody that is a potential ward in a guardianship has to be served with the legal papers. It is absolutely required. After that's done, we have to let the closest family members know that the wife has applied for guardianship. So So she had to let her 2 boys know that she was applying for guardianship for their dad. In this case, one boy was really a great stand-up kid. One boy wasn't. Now she's trying to take care of her husband. She's trying to arrange the care that he needs. She's trying to get the information that she needs to make this all happen. And now she has got the son who has always, shaken him down for money and had his own substance abuse and mental health history at their doorstep. Okay. We haven't even gotten in to see a judge yet. Okay, all that is before we ever see a judge. We finally do get into court where we see a judge. Oh, wait, I forgot. Most important part. The judge is worried that maybe that ward that we say needs a guardian, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Well, so the judge appoints an independent attorney to go out and speak with the proposed ward and tell them about the guardianship and ask them if they want a guardianship, ask them if they want the wife to be the guardian. Okay, and this attorney, it takes a few days to get out there to do that. They file a report with the court and they get paid out of your money. Okay. Now, in this case, it was a pretty straightforward case because the gentleman had a very critical stroke and it was obvious he was unable to do anything for himself. But I've had plenty of clients who've had cognitive or dementia issues. And if you ask them if they need a guardianship, I guarantee you they will say no, and they might put a 4-letter word in front of that. Okay? The other part that they might say is when people get older and a little more vulnerable, a lot of times what we see is kind of that black sheep family member kind of weasels their way in and lets them know that everybody else in the family is against them, but Mom, I'm here for you. Okay? Put me on your bank account. All these other people, they don't have your best interest. It's me. Okay? And so by the time we get to the courthouse, the family is falling apart. Okay. I tell you that story to let you know what a train wreck having to go get a guardianship is. Which, by the way, if everything goes perfectly, the medical evidence is there, the independent attorney says, yes, Judge, I think this person needs a guardian. The criminal background checks come back timely and clear. Okay. Once the judge grants the guardianship, the judge is now a decision maker with you and your family. Every major purchase, expenditure, contract has to go through that judge's review. Okay. Now, none of you want that, okay? I don't want to take all those steps either. At my office, we talk about guardianship as the nuclear option. It is the option of last resort, okay? So how do you avoid this? This sounds expensive, it's time-consuming, it's stressful, and there's no guarantee. Alex and I just got back from a continuing education event in Austin last week. One of the sections was on guardianship, and there's a new judge over in Fort Worth who's just not granting them at all. Because the judges, this is the only time a judge can be personally liable. If they grant a guardianship and they don't properly supervise it, and the guardian runs off with all the money, the judge can be personally liable. That's how come they are looking at everything. Okay. What if you're this lady and you need this information The third party you need it from will not give it to you. And this idea of just not granting a guardianship catches on with some of these other judges. What are we going to do? And I don't know the answer to that yet. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. That luckily we're not in that spot locally. Regardless, though, we want to avoid that guardianship process. The number one best way to avoid guardianship is to complete powers of attorney for your business matters and your medical matters when you are in the best and rightest mind that you can be in. Okay. Many of my seniors will tell me, I don't want to do a power of attorney because I've heard stories about an agent who took off with the money or put one of my friends in a nursing home. Okay. Or I just don't want to give up control. So I want to educate you a little bit about what powers of attorney are and what they aren't. A power of attorney is a voluntary sharing of your legal authority with someone that you trust, that you choose. Okay? Now, it's a sharing of authority. You're not giving up your authority. You still keep 100% of your authority when you sign a power of attorney. I tell a lot of seniors, hey, you don't even have to give a copy of these documents out. You know, if you trust your kids, but you're just like, I trust them, but I don't want to just hand these documents over just yet. Hey, tell them you did them. Tell them that, if something happens, the second file drawer in the spare bedroom has got your documents. Okay? That's still a whole lot better than going to court and getting all that guardianship stuff done. All right, so it's a sharing of authority with the people that you choose, because in that guardianship situation, ultimately the judge chooses who's your guardian. Okay? So at least on a power of attorney, you're selecting the person yourself. And there is no magic selection here. You don't have to pick the oldest child. I even have a lady over in Paris, she didn't even put her husband down first. She said, he's a great guy, but he's never paid the bills in his life. My daughter's a CPA. If something happens to me, I want her taking care of the money. Great. Okay? So on a power of attorney, you choose. You can change that choice at any time. So that way, if your agent that you've chosen shows themselves to be untrustworthy, you can change it. And I always tell the adult kids that. When I have the adult kids in my office with mom or dad and we're signing powers of attorney, I always tell them, look, you can be fired. Act right. Okay. So it's very important when you talk about doing a power of attorney, be honest with yourself first about who you do trust, and then be honest with your attorney, and so that they know. Doing a power of attorney under Texas law in 2017, we got some new laws about powers of attorney that make them more useful, and that's what the courts want. The courts don't want to order guardianships. In fact, the legislature has told judges, you should try to find every other option before appointing a guardian. But many banks, many third parties were not accepting powers of attorney. And so the Texas legislature and the Arkansas legislature has done the same, by the way, has stepped in and said, look, we have this law on the books to make it easy for people to use powers of attorney. So you bank, you retirement fund, you utility company, you have to honor the powers of attorney. Now, I will say that locally, we do have some financial institutions that will tell you, if you bring in a power of attorney, they'll say, oh, we don't honor those. I don't care if you had it done at my office or somewhere else. Call me. I've got letters already pre-written to send to the banks to educate them on what their obligations are when a power of attorney is presented. Okay? So I could go on, I could do a whole section on just guardianships or just powers of attorney, but really today I wanted to let you know that you want to avoid guardianships. If you are a caretaker or you think you will be for parents or another family member, you all need to discuss getting powers of attorney done. People ask all the time, well, I'm too young for a power of attorney. If you are 18 or up, you're the right age for a power of attorney. Okay. Any questions about the guardianships or the powers of attorney? Yes, ma'am?
Not about guardianship or power of attorney. I have a will. I'm 55, and I have a will. I have epilepsy and possible cancer. I'm waiting to find out about that. And it's not all for my husband. It's all divided between my husband, my children, my grandchildren. And so, do I need a power of attorney for that, or is that going to automatically?
Okay.
Is that automatically going to go where it needs to go?
Okay. So she has a will, but she's wondering, does she need a power of attorney in place now? I'm glad you brought that out, because a power of attorney is only good while you're breathing. Okay? It ends at death. That is when something like a will or a trust would take over and your executor would take over. But while you're breathing, yes, a will means nothing while you're breathing. The first requirement for a will to be enforced is you have to be dead. Okay? So I don't care what your will says if you're talking to me. Okay? But while you're living, yes, you need a power of attorney for someone to handle any business matters or a medical power of attorney.
My daughter is the money person.
Yeah.
Take care of everything, make sure everything goes smoothly.
It sounds like you've got a great resource there, so I'm glad for that. Question over here, and then we'll probably do some door prizes and stuff. So.
What if you give your power of attorney to another person, and that person, and you both die in a car accident?
Question is, if you've given your power of attorney to another person and you're both in an accident, well, if you're both dead, it doesn't matter. Now we just need to find your wills. Okay. Now, I'm sorry? Oh, so your concern is, how would the people left behind know about your assets and things? Let me tell y'all, these days, it is good to make a list of assets and things. I like January because those 1099s are rolling in from those CDs or those retirement plans. But these days, a lot of people are just going to electronic statements. Used to, we could kind of rely on the mail that eventually a statement would show up about an account. We can't rely on that anymore. So it is good to have a listing somewhere with your important papers and keep it fresh. The likelihood, you usually peak in assets and then you spend your assets. So you don't want people looking for that, $100,000 CD that you took out and spent on your, lovely assisted living cruise ship style lifestyle. So that is a good idea. I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to be around. I know Alex will be here to also answer some questions, but we just really want to be a good steward of your time. So